Well, if you have joined us for some of our Listen, Learn, Love, and Lead series, you would see Coach Leon Wright-Jackson. He was the very first guest that I talked with, and I appreciate Leon so much, the fact that you just jumped on board, and we haven't known each other really very well before that, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit better throughout this process, and so I really, I did 27 interviews, and at the end of those, I really struggled on, okay, where do I go from here? What do I do? And do I put together like my own thoughts? It could turn into this huge, big monologue. Well, I don't know if people are going to want to sit and watch all that, and so it took me a few weeks where I was thinking, I need to do something. I'm not quite sure how to do it. So I know after our first conversation, a couple days later, we talked, and you're like, afterwards, you always think, man, I left this out. I wish I'd have said this. So we talked about maybe talking again. And so the idea here is you were the first interview, and now we're going to come back, and I'll give you a chance to address anything that you wish you'd have said the first time. And then, we've had 2.5 months or so since that first conversation, and there's still a lot of stuff that's been going on in our country, and maybe update us on kind of your thoughts with the things that have happened recently and where we're at now. And then after that, we're going to flip the tables, and you get to ask me questions, and I'll get a chance to share a little bit about my thoughts and things I've learned in this whole process. And so anyway, Leon, thanks again. Some things that you thought about after our first conversation, and you wish that you'd mentioned those. Why don't you shoot with that?
Yeah, I think I probably mentioned in our last video, but the lack of empathy is a rough one for me. Everybody has their own mind and have their own set of things they believe in, right? So we don't have to agree, but I think what God sent and brings us down here is to at least understand each other and respect and move forward from there. I think that is the biggest thing that's missing is the lack of empathy. There's just no empathy. With what's been going on and continue to go on, it's a battle, and I've spoken to a lot of my friends, and just putting myself out there more, and it's the same story. Listening to everyone, it just feels like we're just being divided. And when I say we, I mean as America. I feel like this is not what makes this country great, even close. I think what made us so, such a dominant country while everybody wanted to be here is because we were so diverse, and we learned how to live in harmony and move forward. And I don't know what is happening, but it just comes down to lack of empathy. Just actually, before I got here, I was sitting down with one of my close friends, and we were just sitting there talking and just thinking, just reminiscing about times of like where there were comments that were said, and we kind of just like let it roll off our back, like even if that was a joke from one of our friends who were white, and we kind of just like rolled it off. But ever since things have been happening, it's been a trigger. And he was one example, but like I said, I've been reaching out to some of my other Black friends, and they say the same thing. And it's just like it feels like we have been conditioned to just roll with the punches and just let it go. And we're seeing that it getting brought up. It was a deeper effect on us because it's still in there. It's something that was still in there, and we kind of just buried, and was like, we hope we never revisit that again. But it reared its ugly face, and then it was just conversation after conversation, and it just every one of them, it was like, man, whatever happened to just loving one another or our differences, man? It's just like, wow. it's been rough, man. It's been really, really rough. I can say that. There's some progress, but it's one of those things that I don't think is going to go away that easy.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I look at it, man, all I've been doing is praying on the matter. That's just that's just where I'm at, because I know as a man, and this, man will let you down every time. Our Heavenly Father will not. And His timing is always perfect, even though we're like, we want it now. Fix it now, but it doesn't work like that. His timing was perfect, and there's a reason why we're going through this storm. But that was something that I was just really missing. It's just like having people that I thought were close friends, or people that I respected, thought they respected me, and just views, and not even reaching out to say, hey man, are you okay? What's going on? Because I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to hear everybody's side. I mean, like I said, you don't have to agree with me. I can't tell you what you haven't experienced, like you can't tell me what I haven't experienced. It's us as human beings to have empathy and to listen and learn. That's that's something that I've been really just trying to do during this time.
Yeah. You mentioned man is going to let you down every time. It's interesting. I was doing some my quiet time reading this week, and one of the chapters I read was Psalm 146. And so I want to just read a little bit of that, because it just touches exactly where I actually had made a note to mention it at some point, and then you mentioned it. It says, not to read the whole thing, but it's only a 10-verse chapter. But it says in verse 3, do not put your trust in princes, in mortal men who cannot save. Princes today, it could be governors and presidents and whoever.
Right.
And then it goes on from there, and it talks about God. Blessed is he whose help is the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord is God, right? So that was just an encouragement to me. And, as we're approaching this contentious election, and both at the state and national level, right? And certainly we want answers from our governmental leaders. We want good laws, and we want changes and improvements. But you know what? There is hope elsewhere as well.
Right, exactly. No, I agree 110%. And, with, touching on like that political part, I've had conversations, and, I've expressed certain things that happen, and, that's a Democratic state. Well, that's a Republican state. For me, I could care less on what party you belong to. Wrong is wrong. Both parties are guilty of it. And that's, I think I have like a little meme that I posted on Facebook, and it was gosh, I think it was Uncle Sam who was carrying, the Democrat party, and the Republican Party was like, we're tired of you guys, and it hits on certain things, man. I mean, it just, right now, man, it's tough, and it's really tough, and then I think of our governor, and again, empathy, right? Man is trying to do what he thinks is best for the state. And is he going to please everybody? No. And I mean, you and I know as head coaches, we make decisions that not everybody's going to agree on. And that's just the way life is. Because what if this man said, okay, no, COVID's not a thing, and we're going to continue to live our lives. And then all of a sudden, all these deaths happen. All these people get sick, all these people get infected. Then who's to blame? He's to blame, right? Same thing. Okay, he felt that he was gonna keep us in a bubble, and that's what I say. Keep us in a bubble and try to be that strict parent, and then a lot of people want to rebel, and all that stuff. So again, it's a double-edged sword, and when things like that happen, you got to look above. You got to look for a divine intervention, because it right now is it's very, very divided. Divided.
And that's come up a couple times now, and that's, if I was to pick one thing, you know, when I share my ideas, like, we need to do this. And what we're doing is we're racing as far as we can apart from each other, whether it's the left and the right, you know, Democrats, Republicans, you know, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, whatever it is, right? Like, we're making people choose sides, and we're defining sides and either saying you're either with them or you're with us. And why does it have to be that way? Can't I say I'm for people? I think Black lives do matter, and whether I agree with the organization behind it or not, I can also say I'm for police officers too, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I love them, and I don't want to see people targeting them and saying ACAB and all these things. Like, I'm for people, and I want us to come together, right? And I think part of it is people need to step up and say, I'm not going to allow them to force me to one side or the other. Right? I'm going to come together. I'm going to love my fellow man. And when there is something wrong, by all means, call it out, whatever side it's on. Right? Stand for justice for every situation.
Exactly. No, exactly. I think there was another saying that both wings belong to the same eagle.
Yep.
There you go. I mean, no, but I agree. It's, you know, because that's always the response, the conversation, you know, when people are like, well, all lives matter. Well, no, duh. Yeah. That's the bigger picture. Yeah. You know, and like with Black Lives Matter, like right now, the African-American, you know, community is suffering, and we're asking for help, you know, help us out. Like, again, we want our seat at the table so we can be included in that all lives matter. That's the end game. That's it. Like, that's, you know, and it's just so crazy to see that people talk about, oh, well, you know, I think I seen rolled across, you know, gosh, man, I tell you what, I've been trying to stay off Facebook because it could be a great thing, but it could also be, it could drain you as well, man. I know. And somebody, you know, posted on there, you know, like, you know, Black Lives Matter is against, you know, all cops. That's not true. You know, I can speak for myself. You know, with our Black Lives Matter coalition down here, I think I said it before, we're trying to work with our policemen. We're trying to understand where they're coming from. They're trying to understand where we're coming from. Again, we're trying to bridge that gap, come together. So it's funny that you kind of get linked with other Black Lives Matters, because I mean, we all have our different battles. You know what they're going through. You know, we know what the main thing is, but we don't know specifics of what each state of Black Lives Matters coalition are going through. I know what I'm dealing with. I know what I'm dealing with here, and I can definitely tell you that I am not for defunding the police officers. One of my coaches is a police officer, and I respect him. I mean, I consider him a brother. So no, not for that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the injustice that we continue to see, and that people want to turn the blind eye to, like we're not human, and how it's okay in all these scenarios. I mean, with I think it's is it Jacob Blake? Is that what you know, the man got shot in the back 7 times, and then it was because he was reaching for his knife. Do we know that's what he was reaching for? Like, it's always oh, he got shot because of this. I mean the scenario could go any way. Okay, you tell this man, hey, stand still and listen. Which, I mean, that's what we're all taught. Pull over by law enforcement. You do the best thing and you listen. Well, then you see the non-resistance and you see police brutality even when you're still. So then when you have when you see that, and then you have a black man who's getting ready to go through that, it's like, do I sit still and let these men beat on me, or walk away or run? You know, things are racing in their head because they have seen the opposite of what we've been taught. We've been taught to listen and follow, the directions, and nothing will happen. No harm will come to you. They get down to the nitty gritty. It's done. You're done. You leave. We've been seeing the opposite, right? So
there's something that I think is interesting because, I've watched so many of these tragic shootings and different things that have happened, and I try and find the longest version I can so I see as much of it. And it's horrible to watch, but I want to be as informed as I can, right? So I want to touch on that, and you mentioned, Jacob Blake, and I know the NFL just started, and I'm seeing people all over. I'm done watching the NFL. They're making it all political, and they got Jacob Blake's name on there. Do you know that he has this sexual offense charge, or he's got this or that, and why are you putting his name on there? And he might have been going for a knife, so I've gone back and I've looked way back to Tamir Rice and different people, and some were encounters with police officers, some were with just people in the neighborhood or whatever, right? But do you think that there should be people taking the time to look and say, well, let's look at the details behind this specific one before we jump on and make that person's names like a rallying cry? And what happens in Kenosha, and there's the riots, and I'll say this: I don't support riots. However, I do also understand Martin Luther King Jr. said riots, they're the language of the unheard, right? And I didn't support Kaepernick 3-4 years ago. Okay. And I thought, don't dishonor our flag. Right. Now today, after all I've listened, all the people I've listened to, what I've read, that was a peaceful protest. Right. And he wasn't trying to disrespect the flag. He was trying to bring attention at great personal loss for himself financially and everything else. And so if you're going to say, rioting is not acceptable, why don't you do it peacefully? Well, when he did, just look how vilified he was, right? And so I guess I have a challenge for people that don't want to see riots, of which I'm one, right? Listen when it's peaceful, and don't call it out for, there's a reason why people are standing up and making their voices heard. And if you don't hear them, they're going to go a little louder, right? So I will also say, though I've made it clear I don't support the riots. Had the riots not started, I don't know if I would have taken this as seriously and ever started this whole process, right?
Oh yeah, it's almost like the ugly had to happen, and that's that's definite. Even from my end, like I said, I was sharing with my friend a couple hours ago. As a black man, like I was, things were happening, before the kickoff for George Floyd. Things have been happening, and it's been, I can say as myself, as a black man, I viewed it, and I was just like, ugh. But then I moved on. I didn't let it just sit with me. I just kept pushing and living my own life. And, when everything got taken away, it was like I was forced to hear and to listen. And then realizing like, whoa, this affects me in so many ways, but I just kept it hidden, right? So like, going on to the NFL and the NBA, I mean, think about it this way. Like for me, I could say growing up, I wanted to be like Eddie George. I wanted to be like Eric Dickerson. Why? Because they were both 6'2", 6'3", 200+ pound running backs that were strong. They were similar to me, right? We listen to kids listen to those are our stars. Those are the guys that the people we look up to, because they're at some level that we dream of being someday. And now they're using their platform for more than just sports. And now all of a sudden it's shut up and just play ball or it's, for me, it's like, wow, like now these star athletes are standing up for more than just a basketball or football or baseball or soccer ball or whatever, and actually caring about what's going on in our world instead of themselves, man, how selfless can you be? I mean, that's that speaks volumes. And I scratch my head when I see people like, oh, I'm so tired of that. Again, we're not going to all agree on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, I think 2-point conversions should be 4 points.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to stop me from playing football because they say, no, Leon, it's 2-point conversion is a 2-point conversion. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's so on the defense. And I think what you have been doing with these streams and stuff is, I feel what everybody should sit back and model. We should listen. Listen. Right now, I feel like when you have a conversation with certain people, they listen to respond.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, you can tell me, you can hit me with some facts about why you think this way, and I'm not hearing you. I'm just ready to throw whatever fact I have at you.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, that's the problem. We need to listen. Sit down, listen.
Erin Jones is one of the guests that I had on, and she had a physical demonstration she did. She said when most people are listening, they're listening like this, like you said, ready to respond and counterpunch.
Yeah.
Well, we need to listen like this.
Right.
What can I learn? What can I take in from you? Right.
Right.
So 2 things I want to touch on. One, you mentioned I don't know if it's called chapter or your group of Black Lives Matter, and from what I understand, there's about 40 some of those around the nation, and there's the kind of the national group, and I don't know how much the national runs, organizes the smaller groups that break out in different areas. Maybe if you can touch on that, because I know myself as a Christian, as I start looking into it, like I want to support the cause of let's stop injustice, right?
Right.
Let's stand with our brothers of color and so forth. But then I look into it and I see, I went on their official website a while back, and it says, we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other, so they're kind of against the regular family and dad in the household and some of these kind of things, and a number of other things which have been well publicized, right? And so I'm thinking, well, that I just can't support that organization. Is that pushed at each level, or are you kind of given some autonomy on that?
I can honestly say that our chapter or our coalition over here in the Tri-Cities, nothing like it. Mm-hmm. It's nothing like that. We push family. We want our fathers in the household with our, we want family. We want all that. And I get it. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, I think there's different. It's funny because we use the same acronym, right? Mm-hmm. There's a different meaning, and I don't agree with that. Like, with the original one, I can honestly say I don't agree with that because that's not what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. Definitely not. I know what like our community leaders around here in Tri-Cities, that's not what they're looking for. No, because each and every one of them has a family, and they're really involved in our community, and they're well known and positive, peaceful people. Never had any unrest, and we had people that were trying to start those things. As bad as it sounds, to the curb, because that's not what we're about. Mm-hmm. I'm totally against riots, mm-hmm. for it at all. I personally don't think it makes anything better. I think it just fuels the fire. And I mean, I do understand like what you said with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said. Sometimes it has to happen, which absolutely sucks. But yeah, ours. And that's the thing. I actually had a conversation with a teammate from college, and we disagreed on things, and he posted, well, it was directed at me, and he was like, well, Leon, I can't believe that you support Black Lives Matter. They're over here burning Bibles. Well, I mean, for the few conversations we have, you know that I'm a Christian man. So, like, I was like, what, you think I agree with that? And he was like, well, you're with them. I was like, okay, so you're going to clump me. Here we go with the choosing sides. So, I said, okay, well, I said, all right, so if you're clumping me, I said, then that means that you are in support of the Ku Klux Klan. And he goes, whoa, well, where did that come from? I go, well, the alt-right, And I said, they're for the right and they're for Trump and all that stuff. So does that mean that you are a racist? Does that mean that you hate blacks, Mexicans, and all that stuff, and you want to be the superior race and all that stuff? And he was just taken back. Just like, whoa, I get what you're saying. I said, that's it. Like, listen, like, don't come at me like that. Like, hey, Leon, you can ask me, like, hey, Leon, did you hear about this? What's it like over with you? If we're supposed to be ex-teammates, friends, I guess why it's all this calling each other out, making each other feel less than. It's just, it's sad, and it's very, it gets you nowhere. It gets you absolutely nowhere. But when I put it in that perspective, he understood. Then he was like, okay, I got you. I was like, that's what you pretty much said to me. It's like, I don't agree with that, not even close, but okay. So again, it just comes back, man. We gotta listen.
Yeah, and I see that's where I think, again, you said, well, he grouped me, and so I grouped him, and to give him the idea of what it's like, we don't see people as individuals. And so I think that's part of what allows, I don't know if this is, I think it's probably more Antifa or whatever, but like you see the 100+ days in Portland, and in Seattle, they tried to, cement police into a place and set the building on fire, and the lasers in the eyes. They've obviously dehumanized those people. Right? And so anytime you lump in group, whether you lump a minority group or you lump police or whatever, and you say all of this, I mean, you're on super dangerous ground. And we need to see people as individuals. And you mentioned empathy. That's where you're going to have your empathy, right? When I see you for who you are, and that you personally matter, and that you were created and designed by God in His image. And, nobody's any better than anybody else just because of, the color of their skin or their profession or whatever. They're individuals that want to go home to their family,
Right. Exactly. At the end of the day, it's you hit it right on the head. It's just, man. And it's so funny because, like, when you sit down and actually have the conversation, you're just like, that's at the end of the day. The end goal is to be together, but it's like different routes that's dividing us like this before we can even get back to like the main part. It's just.
So let me throw this out and see what you think of this. Obviously social media, I mean, and it's not just from our country. There's, these trolls from Russia and China and whoever that want to cause chaos in our country because, united we stand, divided we fall. They love to see this happening, right?
Oh, yes.
But and I fell for a little bit a year or two ago. When I teach my students, I say, hey, whatever you see that comes out there, and even if you see a video of it, if it's short or whatever, you need to wait at least 48 hours before you even comment on social media or something else, because there's probably more behind it that you're going to come out with, right? So I lived on a reservation until I was 5 years old. I'm not Native at all, but like, I have a huge affinity for the Native population, right? And when Nick Sandman was out there with his MAGA hat on, and the clip came out that he's like looking in the face of Nathan Phillips, this Native drummer, I was just furious. Look at the smug look on that kid's face. I'd love to smack that hat right off his head. And I was upset, right? And then I learned my own lesson on that one. As it came out, there's more behind it and so forth. And so that brings me back to the situation when you have Jacob Blake, for instance. You see a short clip and I watch it and I got furious again because here he is walking to his car, and he gets shot in the back 7 times. And I was like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? And then as you find out, there's more information. Now, by the way, the police there don't have body cameras in that town. Like, police reform needs to happen. Every single police officer in our country should have body cameras. Like, so there's definite reforms that I'm 100% need to happen, right? And I think that takes more money, not less. You need, but so it turns out, from what I hear, twice they tried to tase him. And so what you're seeing is just the last part of that. What I've read is there was a knife in the front side. Was he going for it? I don't know. But so you have a situation where he wasn't listening to what the police were saying. There was a weapon. They tried to restrain him with non-lethal force. All this comes out, and it is tragic that he got shot, right? I wish it didn't happen to go that way. But when his name becomes a rallying cry, and there's rioting and the city's on fire, and then there's a 17-year-old kid from a neighboring state that comes in and 2 more people get shot, and like all this snowballs, I think that those that want us divided, that want us to go to opposite sides, they feed us with all this stuff, and they give us the shortened clips. And you know what? So then I go and I look at a guy like Rashard Brooks, and I watched the whole encounter from when police first went to him after he'd been drinking a little bit, went through a Wendy's drive-thru, he's passed out, and they come in. And that guy, he was like the nicest guy. So I watched like a half hour or more of him interacting with the police, and I'm just, and then at some point he takes off and runs, and he gets a taser from a cop and tries to tase him, and they shoot him. And there's some African Americans that stand by there. Here we go. What? And this to me was so tragic. There's no reason the man should have been shot whatsoever. They could have, even if they just let him run off, his car's there, he lives a few blocks away. They can pick him up later, right? And yeah, he pointed a taser shoot, but that's non-lethal. You got a bunch of cops there by this point. So that to me seems like here's one that maybe we rally behind. And you look at Breonna Taylor, who, the no knock, like that needs to not be legal anywhere, right? As somebody bursts into my house in the middle of the night, I'm going to shoot to defend my family. And if it's a basic SWAT team, I'm probably the one that's going to get shot, right? So there's certain situations. Philando Castile has a legal permit to carry a gun. He's trying to tell the police officers, hey, I've got a license, a concealed weapons permit, and he's doing it all right, and he gets shot. Like, am I wrong to think that maybe we need to give 48 hours after, and then say, okay, is this a situation where we need to rally and we need to get going? Because then when you put the name, Jacob Blake on the helmets, and you've got a big group of people now saying, well, I'm done ever watching this, and it divides things further when it's a situation maybe and a name that people aren't gonna. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. No, it's again, I think that we definitely react faster than we let things process. It's kind of like that have it your way all the time, like right now, we need it right now. I definitely believe in the 48 hours. Let things come out. Let facts come out, right? And then we go from there. See, like on it, to be real with you, I didn't even know that. I didn't know that that they tried those other steps, and he didn't comply. It's again division. I think honestly, you clump another African American man getting shot in the back, and again, like you said, it's a snowball effect, and all it does is divide even more. And I feel like the news is the worst thing. I feel like because all they're worried about is ratings, and it's all about the money, and it's all about this is what we're going to show, who's going to be the first one to show it. They don't care about God. Notice that's bad, man. It's almost like they sold their soul, okay? and they're part of the problem.
And depending on what channel you turn on, what you're going to hear.
Exactly. It's I keep saying it. It's sad, but it's what keeps dividing us for sure.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100% that for our rule, that's a great rule, because you need to know the facts. You need to know what really happened, what truly happened. Then you'll probably have a better understanding. But then jumping the gun of, well, man, here you guys go again, killing another black man, and it's just, it's exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Is there something else you want to touch on? Anything else that you want to share? And then I'll let you ask me a few things.
Something that I've discussed with, and just in general with, like being African American, and there have been times where, and it's funny, like I said, it's crazy that we're talking about this, because I was just talking to my buddy about this, and he mentioned, he's like, man, he's like, he played college football, and he was like, yeah, no, man, I sat down in front of my coach, and he was like, hey, man, there's some real black coach, real black guys on your team, make sure you distance yourself. And again, this is just going back to the past of like things that we just kind of didn't understand, and you kind of just let it roll off your back. And he said, I didn't know how to take that at the time, and again, just being that college athlete, and I just like kind of looked at my coach like, okay, kind of like laughed it off and walked off uncomfortable.
Like what is real black?
Yeah. He's like, because I'm black, and I don't know what that means. And then, I was like, and then when he said it, it triggered something in me when I was at Nebraska. One of my teammates, and he goes, man, you're not like other black guys. And I go, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you talk proper. Oh, okay. And again, those are things that you just like laughing off and just, wow. But yeah, we had a conversation and just like, I didn't know you can be less black or more black or less accepted. It just those are just a lot of things that I know that are coming up now. Because you get all kind of sort of division in every aspect within your culture, outside of your culture. I just see a lot of division.
It's interesting. Throughout these interviews, the thing that seems to have stood out to most of the people that I've talked to, that's kind of hurts more, and maybe you don't even realize it at the time, but then later it hits harder, like you just mentioned in that situation. It's not some stranger calling you the N-word or something, although it sticks there. It's hurtful. Right. It's all those things, but it's the people around you that know you that are like, oh, you're not like, Yeah. I know I was talking to Mike Bush, and what just drove him nuts is that same kind of thing. Either you're not dressing the way that I have you pegged, or you're not speaking the way. It's like, if you actually ask the question, okay, what should I speak like?
Yeah.
How racist does that seem? Say it out loud. It's like, what are you saying, right? And so that's actually kind of a common thing that I've heard come up. It's the things that are kind of undertones that might slip by a lot of people, and they might not even realize it, but that really hurts a lot.
Right. Yeah. No. One of my buddies, he said, "Man, I'd rather you just go ahead and call me the N-word, because at least I know, at least I know where you stand." He said it's the underline that really gets you. And he grew up in Georgia, and in a rough part of Georgia, and he said it was like that. You knew where some stood, like, and then it's like, all right, well, I know not to be there, but he said that ever since he has been over here, he said it's the undertone. The undertone kind of it's kind of like a snake bite, like you're walking around and it just jump up and get you, like, wow, whoa, that kind of caught me off guard. But yeah, no, it's like I said, man, it's we've gone through a few things. And actually, the guy that I'm talking about, he was 4, like when all this started happening, in the sense of like Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. Well, in our community, he's very active, and he was going to do a segment, like a small documentary on our local authority, local officers, to show that they're human too. They want to go home too. Like he was trying to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And within that, like less than a month later, he got profiled to a point where he had some guns on, like drawn on him, because he fit the description, and it was all over. I mean, he put it, his girlfriend put it all over Facebook, and it was traumatizing to watch this guy who, was trying to do good in our community, and, I mean, never have had any issues with the law, ex-college football player, again, big in our community, to watch him have to, hear them, give him his orders. And I mean, he did everything right, but it just like the guns were drawn on him. I mean, one false move or, one false sound, it could have been his life.
Yeah.
And even after that happened, we with our Black Lives Matter, we did like, a march with him across our local bridge. And after we marched, and he said, he's like, I'm not mad. I have no ill will towards our law. They were just doing what they were taught. That is the problem. He said, now we have to figure out how to strike where they need to learn how to be taught something different, how to go about it in a different manner. He's like, I ain't gonna lie. He said, everything was going through my head. He's like, I didn't know if I was gonna see my daughter again. He's like, I was just thinking in my head, like, God, just take care of my daughter. Like, he was just there. And he was like, and it was just all because, I drove, he drove a Dodge Charger that was the color red. And when he even explained who he was, and gave them the license and all that stuff, they still put him in the back of the cruiser, like, and he sat there and he's like, I told you who I am, like, let me go. So, after you and I talked the first time, we've gone through some storms, some storms over here. But at the end of the day, from like our group, we're still trying to bridge that gap. That's the main goal. Seeing some good things, but like I said, the battle it's going to be a long one.
Yeah, and to me, I've always looked, and I still continue to look. I think police officers, for the most part, they're heroes. Those are
right.
You call 911 and they come running to the danger, right? I really want to honor them. I think most are great. Many, though, maybe have been trained in systems where that kind of thing's allowed to happen. So I've probably had 7 or 8 encounters with police officers where I've been pulled over or whatever. I've never once had a gun drawn on me, right? I shared this with somebody else. Like, all I'm worried about is, am I going to get a ticket? Is my insurance going to go up? And then Ken Alexander's, he was on my staff for a little bit, and I had the same conversation with him, and he said 5 out of 7 of his police encounters, he's had guns drawn on. I mean, that's really the difference is he was a young black man and I'm a white man, right? That's probably about it. And so that just gives, not every encounter that a black person has with a police officer is racist.
Right.
It's hard to prove, but when you see things like that, well, why did they draw the guns on him and not on me, right? There's enough things that add up over there, and story after story that I've heard from people that I'm absolutely convinced that that's an issue, right? And so reforms, like I mentioned, I think police should have body cameras for sure, and the no-knock deal. Maybe I mentioned more funding. Some people have said, well, take the funding and put it towards maybe social workers to go to certain things. A lot of those can be dangerous situations. I'm thinking maybe even a situation where police go in partners. They don't ride by themselves, right? Because now there's more safety for them. They're not going to maybe feel as nervous. Also, they can watch each other. And maybe if you rotated partners every 6 weeks, if you and I were partners for 6 weeks, I'm probably going to tell if you are treating people differently, and I can make sure that's reported to my superiors. And if, you know, your last 5 partners have said, yeah, this guy is probably need to take a look at that guy, right? Get him out of the force, train him, something. But yeah, so that to me is kind of a big deal. What questions do you have for me?
All right. I thought of a lot. You know, I guess one of my questions is, have you experienced loss of friends during this time, just because off of simple beliefs of what you believe, like what they consider you side with, like what has that been for you?
Yeah, you know, people haven't come outright and said it too much, although I sometimes will get a few comments on social media here or there, and you can tell, you know, and maybe they stop commenting. I did have one person, you know, that, well, even just this last week, I was talking about, hey, great seeing football in Washington. The Seahawks looked awesome. You know, it's good to see safe football in Washington. Hopefully we'll be back soon. And somebody said, what do you think about how political it got? And I basically said, well, what better time, I mean, to take this opportunity to do that. And it was done, I thought, very respectfully and tastefully, and you know, never a response. But there was a guy who's a personal friend, and has been a Facebook friend for a long time. And I think probably one of my 3rd or 4th interviews, I mentioned something about MAGA, you know, the phrase, like, make America great again. When has it been great for Native Americans or Chinese Americans or African Americans? At what point is that a racist statement, or is it just extremely tone deaf, right?
Yeah.
And I made that statement, and my wife and I went back, because a couple weeks in, I got this recommendation for a friend on Facebook, and I'm like, wait, I thought we were friends. Well, clearly he'd unfriended me, and I'm thinking, oh, I bet, my wife is like, I bet it's when you said something about President Trump, you know. And so that's one that I know. I'm sure there's others that have just kind of gone away and just done it quietly. So yeah, I haven't had anybody deliberately tell me that, but there have been some, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. It's a crazy one, man. It's a crazy one. Definitely on my end, had some ooh-ahs and a few arguments. Kind of just, you know, a lot of people on Facebook right now are like, well, if you don't like this, unfriend me. Then we weren't friends, because then we weren't friends in the beginning. It's just, it's wild. No, I just thought I'd definitely ask you that one, because I know that's been going around like wildfire.
And I know I have an assistant coach who, early on when I first started this, he shared with his mom, and he was telling me about it. She's like, why is he doing this? Why, you know, and just why are you jumping into that kind of stuff? So it's definitely out there.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. Which I commend you, man. This is awesome. What's my next question? What have you taken from all this? Like, because I know you've interviewed quite a lot of people. I mean, a lot. You know, it's awesome, because, like I said, like, you know, I watched majority of them. There were some views that aligned with mine, and there were some views that didn't. You know, but it was also enlightening for me, you know, to see from other African American, you know, other people of color, go through their battles and see, you know, how they handled it, or what they've seen. So out of all of this, what have you taken?
I would say the number one thing is a word you brought up earlier. It's empathy, right? It was actually, and obviously for me to take this on, it had hit me at a personal, emotional level, at some level. But I had talked to you, I had talked to Tony Davis, I had talked to Mark Stewart, and I was watching the music video from Lecrae, The Deep End, and I'd watched it several times. And there's at one point this scene where it's just panning, you know, there's riots and people with their fists up, and it goes by these kids, you know, black boys who are probably 8, 10 years old. And and it just hit me like, what these kids have to be thinking, like, why is this happening? And to realize, because I'm black, people don't like me because of this, and like, and their world's coming down around them, and it's to realize that, and I got to the point where I had tears, like I cried. It emotionally hit me to that point, and that was the first time that I cried with that, right? And then I'm only 3 days in, I'm thinking, oh, I could be an emotional wreck, but in a good way, right? Because the empathy that comes in. So that was something positive. And then just hearing, like I said, all the different stories from people that I know. And whereas if one or two people tell you a story, hey, this happened, you might be thinking, oh, maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe it's, not what he thinks or what. No, it happens across the board. And so the level of, driving while black or walking while black or things that happen, you have to be out of certain areas of the city by certain times, and all those things made it absolutely abundantly clear to me that that's going on. Right. And some more empathy there. Some positive things that have come out of it. Talking with Erin Jones, she shared with me that there's now a pastor that she's friends with, that she put me in contact with, that now is himself started a podcast that they do either weekly or monthly with 4 people, and they're bringing this discussion on. So it's growing, and that was a huge encouragement. I had a couple of, one First Nations from Canada, one Native American from Oklahoma that I talked to. And I met with I went up to visit my dad, and he had a Native American guy that was visiting him there at the time who had seen it, and seen both of those. And so he just starts opening up and sharing with me. I'm not doing an interview. I'm just there. And now I'm hearing a story. And he was a guy that had to go. I don't know if you're familiar with the residential schools that they had in Canada, and boarding schools where they took natives, and by force you had to go off to school, and it was horrible, right? So now I'm hearing, and so it was really kind of cool because I heard his story, and he felt it was safe to share. And so just the connection and the care and the relationships, I would say those would be the main things that. Certainly there's more than I can mention, but those would be things that jump out right off the top of my head.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I think with you doing this and people viewing it, like you said, I think you have shown that you're a person that you're willing to listen. I think that goes miles and miles for people who need someone to talk to. Need someone just to hear, just to hear, and to take into consideration. That's big. that's really big. And that's why I said what I said. I can't remember what I said it, but like, I've been just watching on the outside and seeing what you're doing. And I'm just like, man, you're someone I can say you're an ally, you're an ally I know that I can run to and talk to, just about life, just about what's going on in this world, and really try to figure out a solution like that. Man, it's so funny, and I laugh because it's really that simple. It's really that simple, and it's just showing, like right now, just showing how people just are refusing to make things better. It's kind of that my way or the highway kind of tone, but those were the 2 questions I was gonna ask you, man. I think again, man, like I commend what you do. This was awesome, and I appreciate you having me on here.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, and I would say, to close for myself, I really do feel, and I know not everybody's a believer in Christ. There's different worldviews out there. For me, I do believe that we are in a world that is sinful, and this racism is sin, and it came because of sin. And going to God, that's where we're going to find the peace that we're looking for. And there's certain views out there that think, well, people are inherently good, and if we just give them more space or time, it's going to work out. And I think we have a history of the world that shows it gets more violent each, century. And, you break it down even to like the two closest people that you can find. A man and a wife, you get married, you swear, I love you more than anybody else in the whole world. I commit my life to you till death do us part, for better or worse, right? And 50% of those relationships end up in divorce and people split. And I think that's because there's this inherent selfishness and desire for things, right? And that's where, for me, I know if I would just do what I want all the time, I'd be a total wreck. And that's why I need a savior, right? Inherently, I'm not that good of a person. And so I have to commit my time daily to reading the Word of God and dying to myself every day to try and follow Christ better, and to love, because when Jesus was asked what's the greatest commandment, he said to love your God with your heart, all your heart, soul, and strength, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And so you mentioned earlier love, and that is my number one word. Like, if I can love people and support people, and I want to support people of color, and I want to support police officers, and when there's things that are wrong, let's work on it, let's improve it, let's get it better. But I don't hate you, I don't hate you, I don't hate, I want to see people as individuals that have worth and that are valuable. And so love, I think, would be my last word. So
that's a great one.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Leon. I really appreciate it. And I definitely want to stay in touch.
All right, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.